Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. Among the darkest legends of Native American lore, one creature stands above the rest. A being that steals shapes, steals voices, and sometimes steals lives. This is the Skinwalker, a shapeshifter born not from magic but from a forbidden sacrifice. If you hear it call your name from the darkness, run. There is a creature that lives in the space between breaths, in the silence between heartbeats. It is not found on any conventional map, yet its territory is vast and ancient, etched into the very bones of the world through whispered tales and half-remembered nightmares. Its name is spoken in hushed tones, around fires that fight back oppressing darkness, or carried on winds that sweep down from lonely mesas and through dense, primordial woods. This is the Skinwalker. To some, it is a cautionary tale, a monster from folklore meant to enforce social taboos. To others, it is a terrifying reality, a shapeshifter of immense power and malice that walks the blurred line between man and beast. It is a being woven from equal parts magic, medicine, and profound transgression. For the next half hour, we will walk along the edge of its shadow. We will delve into the deep cultural origins from which it sprang, explore the chilling mechanics of its transformation, and recount the harrowing encounters that have cemented its legend. We will feel the dread of a night when the eyes watching from the tree line are too intelligent to belong to any ordinary animal, and hear the stories of those who have felt its corrosive touch. This is an exploration of a being that is less a simple monster and more a manifestation of a fundamental, unsettling truth, that the greatest darkness often wears a familiar face. So, listen closely. The wind is picking up, the shadows are lengthening, and something is moving out there, just beyond the reach of the firelight. The Skinwalker, known in the Navajo language as Yi-Naldlusha, which translates to, with it, he goes on all fours, is not a universal monster myth. It is a deeply specific entity, rooted in the rich and complex spiritual landscape of the Dene, the Navajo people. Its home is the vast, breathtaking, and often harsh expanse of the Navajo Nation, a land of red rock canyons that bleed color in the sunset, towering sandstone monoliths that guard ancient secrets, and endless sagebrush plains under a dome of impossible stars. This is not a land for the faint of heart. Its beauty is matched by its austerity, and its spirits are as old as the wind-carved stone. Within this context, the Skinwalker does not emerge from a void. It is a creation of corruption, a terrible perversion of Navajo spiritual practices. To understand the beast, one must first understand the Hajua, the concept of balance, beauty, and harmony that is central to Navajo life. Traditional healers, or Hadale, work within this system, using prayer, song, and sacred rituals to restore Hajua to individuals and the community. Their power is immense, but it is bound by strict ethical and ceremonial laws. The Skinwalker is what happens when that sacred knowledge, that medicine, is inverted. It is a practitioner who has chosen, willingly and with full awareness, to step off the path of harmony and onto the path of Hachksua, ugliness, disorder, and evil. They do not merely become a monster. They use the tools of creation to will themselves into monstrosity. This origin makes the Skinwalker uniquely terrifying. It is not a mindless predator or a force of nature. It is a person who has sacrificed their humanity to gain power, to indulge in envy, greed, or vengeance. It knows your language, your customs, your fears. It was once your neighbor, or perhaps even your relative. Its evil is a conscious choice, and that makes its gaze all the more chilling. The transformation itself is not a blurry, cinematic dissolve. It is a gruesome, visceral act of dark ritual, described in whispers as requiring the ultimate transgression, the killing of a close family member. This act, the ultimate violation of kinship bonds, is said to provide the necessary power or spiritual currency for the darkest magic. With this corrupted energy, the practitioner performs forbidden ceremonies, often involving the use of corpse powder made from the ground bones of the dead, and the donning of a pelt or skin of the animal they wish to become. This is not mere disguise. Through chants that twist sacred prayers into blasphemies, the Skinwalker's body contorts, bones audibly cracking and reforming, sinews stretching, senses sharpening to an inhuman degree. The pelt becomes flesh, the man becomes wolf, coyote, bear, owl, or crow, but the transformation is rarely perfect. This is a key detail in many accounts. The creature may move with the loping gait of a wolf, but its posture might be slightly off, its proportions unnerving, a torso too long, limbs jointed incorrectly. Its eyes, often the most damning feature, retain a chilling human intelligence, a gleam of malicious awareness that no true animal possesses. It may be able to speak, its voice a grotesque parody of human speech, emerging from a bestial muzzle. This uncanny valley effect is a core source of its horror. It is close enough to the natural world to blend in, but fundamentally wrong, a glitch in the fabric of reality. It moves with supernatural speed and silence, able to cover vast distances in the blink of an eye, its tracks vanishing inexplicably. It is a creature of paradox, powerfully physical yet able to defy physics, born of ancient tradition yet a blight upon it. Why? What drives a person to such depths? The lore provides several motives, all rooted in the darkest corners of the human heart. Sometimes it is pure, avaricious greed. A skinwalker may be hired to curse a rival's family, to sicken their livestock, or to bring ruin upon a prosperous home. Envy is a powerful catalyst, envy of another's health, their family harmony, their material success. In a culture that values community balance, the skinwalker is the embodiment of cancerous jealousy, seeking not to raise themselves up but to tear others down. Vengeance, twisted and magnified by dark magic, is another common thread. A perceived slight, a generational feud, can fester until a member seeks power outside the bounds of humanity to settle the score. There are also whispers of a more addictive motive, the hunger for the power itself. The ability to move unseen, to instill paralyzing fear, to manipulate the physical world with a thought. This can become a drug. The initial transgression, made in a moment of passion or greed, leads to a deeper descent, as the practitioner must commit further atrocities to maintain their abilities or to stave off the horrific consequences of their own corruption. The skinwalker, therefore, is not just a threat to the physical body, but to the entire social and spiritual fabric. It destroys trust because anyone could be one. It perverts the sacred, turning tools of healing into instruments of suffering. It preys on the fundamental Navajo values of family, community, and harmony, making its existence a profound cultural trauma. This is why traditionally talking about them openly was, and in many places still is, strongly discouraged. To speak its name is to invite its attention. To dwell on its stories is to give its darkness energy. Encounters with the skinwalker are rarely straightforward battles. They are psychological assaults, games of terror played on a supernatural scale. Often the first sign is not a sight but a sound. The desperate, impossible cry of an infant, wailing from a desolate canyon where no child could be. The sound of a loved one's voice, calling for help from just outside the door on a moonless night. A voice you know is not truly there, but is so perfectly mimicked your heart lurches. It might be the sound of something large scratching at the walls of your hogan, or tapping with long fingernails on the window pane. Then, the sightings begin. A wolf standing upright on two legs at the edge of the tree line, watching your house. A coyote with eyes that shine like polished coins in your headlights, refusing to move from the center of a remote road, its gaze tracking you with unsettling familiarity. A large owl, far larger than any natural owl, perched on your roof night after night. These creatures display brazen, unnatural behavior. They show no fear of humans, of lights, or of vehicles. They may follow you for miles, always staying just at the edge of visibility. Some accounts describe a feeling of overwhelming dread, a physical weight of malevolence that precedes any visual sign, a sense of being studied by a profound and intelligent hatred. The creature seems to feed on this fear, drawing power from the panic it induces. Its actions are often cruel and taunting. It may slaughter sheep not for food, but for spite, leaving the mutilated bodies arranged in a grotesque display. It might steal personal items, not for their value, but to use in sympathetic magic against their owner. The goal is not always immediate death. It is often a slow erosion of sanity, safety, and health. Defense against such a being requires more than weapons. It requires spiritual knowledge and purity of intent. Traditional protections are deeply rooted in Navajo cosmology. Sacred substances are paramount. Corn pollen, a symbol of life and blessing, is often sprinkled around the perimeter of a home, across doorways and on window sills. Its purity is believed to repel corrupt forces. Ash from a sacred fire or from burned cedar and sage can be used in a similar manner. Ceremonial practices involve the creation of ghost beads or the use of turquoise and obsidian, materials with protective properties. Perhaps the most famous deterrent, however, is the mention of ashes from a lightning-struck tree. Lightning is a powerful, purifying force from the heavens, and its ashes are considered lethal to a skinwalker. Knowing and speaking the skinwalker's true, human name is also said to break its power, as it forces its human identity back to the surface. A dangerous gambit, for it requires knowing the unknowable. Fire itself is a potent barrier. The creature is said to fear and respect it. Most importantly, the teachings emphasize that fear is its weapon. To resist giving in to paralyzing terror, to maintain one's haja through courage and prayer, is to deny it the very energy it seeks to consume. Community is also a shield. Isolation makes one a target. Staying within the group, especially at night, provides safety. These practices are not superstitious trifles. They are a coherent system of spiritual defense honed over generations against a very real, culturally understood threat. They represent the community's collective will to maintain order against the entropy of evil. Let us now turn to the stories, the narratives that have passed from generation to generation, carrying the weight of warning. One common tale tells of a man who became suspicious of a particular neighbor, a man who was always standoffish and whose eyes seemed to hold a cold light. This neighbor was often seen leaving his hogan late at night. One evening, the man decided to follow at a great distance. He watched as the neighbor went to a secluded spot, produced a wolf pelt from a bundle, and began to chant. Horrified, the witness saw the transformation begin. He stayed hidden until the creature loped away into the darkness. Knowing he had to protect his family, he rushed home and did the only thing he could think of. He gathered his family in the center of the hogan, built the fire high, and began to sing the most sacred and protective prayers he knew. He heard scratching at the walls all night, and a voice that sounded like his neighbor's whispering threats, but the fire and the songs held the darkness at bay until dawn. At first light, he went to the community leaders. It is said the accused neighbor was confronted with the witness's knowledge and, faced with the exposure of his secret, fell gravely ill and died soon after, a common folkloric punishment for a skinwalker whose identity is revealed. Another harrowing account, often told on reservations, is the story of the skinwalker and the truck. A man is driving late at night on a remote back road. In his rearview mirror, he sees a pair of headlights approaching at an impossible speed. He speeds up, but the lights gain on him effortlessly. As the vehicle pulls alongside, he sees it's a dark truck, but the driver's side window is rolled down and the figure inside is not human. It has the head of a large wolf or coyote, its muzzle pointed forward, hands gripping the wheel. It turns to look at him, eyes gleaming before speeding ahead and disappearing over a hill. The man, terrified, drives to the nearest town. When he describes the truck to locals, they go pale. They tell him that truck belongs to a man who lives out in the hills, a man people have whispered about for years. They warn him to never speak of it again and to avoid that road after dark. This story taps into the modern fear of the open road, blending the ancient terror with contemporary settings, making the skinwalker's threat ever-present and adaptable. There are tales with even more bizarre and unsettling details. Some speak of skinwalkers who can steal a person's voice, mimicking it perfectly to lure loved ones into danger. Others describe their ability to become a swirling mass of feathers, dust, or insects to move undetected. One persistent motif is the Skinwalker's vulnerability to bullets dipped in white ash, or better yet, the ash from a lightning-struck tree. A story tells of a rancher, plagued by something killing his livestock in unnatural ways. He consulted an elder, who instructed him to prepare a special bullet. The next night he lay in wait. He saw a large, misshapen wolf approach the corral. He fired and heard a distinctly human cry of pain. The next day, he followed a trail of blood that led not into the wilderness, but to the doorstep of a man in the community who was known to be a skilled herbalist, but also deeply resentful. The man was found inside, dead from a gunshot wound. These stories serve as grim parables about the consequences of evil and the community's right to defend its harmony by any means necessary, even if it means turning the tools of the modern world against an ancient foe. But the Skinwalker's influence has bled beyond the confines of Navajo culture in the Southwest. As tales traveled, were misappropriated, and blended with other horror tropes, the creature underwent a transformation in the broader popular imagination. In modern fantasy literature, role-playing games, and film, the Skinwalker has often been stripped of its deep cultural context and reduced to a generic shape-shifting monster. It becomes a creature that can mimic any person perfectly, a parasitic entity that wears the skin of its victims, a foe to be slain by a hero with a silver weapon. This dilution is a point of significant cultural pain for the Navajo people. Their specific, culturally grounded cautionary tale about the abuse of sacred knowledge becomes just another spooky monster in a crowded bestiary, its unique meaning lost. However, in recent years, a more nuanced conversation has begun. Through the work of Native authors, filmmakers, and scholars, there is a push to recenter the narrative, to explain the Skinwalker not as a cheap horror device, but as a powerful symbol of spiritual corruption and cultural violation. It serves as a potent metaphor for the dangers of using sacred knowledge for personal gain, for the rot that sets in when community bonds are severed, and for the horror of the familiar turned hostile. In this light, the Skinwalker legend speaks to universal human fears, of betrayal, of the monster within, of the fragility of social order, while remaining firmly rooted in a specific and living cultural worldview. What then does the Skinwalker ultimately represent? It is a mirror held up to humanity's capacity for evil. It is the embodiment of the choice to abandon harmony for power, to sacrifice kinship for selfish desire. It is the fear that the person you know might harbor a monstrous secret, that the natural world you trust might hold an intelligence that wishes you harm. The legend enforces social cohesion by painting the ultimate outsider, the one who has rejected all bonds. It is also a story about consequences. The Skinwalker's power comes at a horrific cost: the loss of their humanity, the constant hunger of corruption, and the eventual inevitable retribution, either from the community or from the spiraling decay of their own soul. The land itself in these stories is not a passive backdrop. The red rocks, the deep canyons, the whispering pines, they are witnesses. They hold the memory of the transgressions. The Skinwalker moves through a landscape that knows what it is, a landscape that is alive with older, purer powers that may ultimately reject the aberration. In our modern, interconnected world, the stories persist. They are shared on internet forums dedicated to the paranormal, often stripped of context, becoming campfire tales for a digital age. Yet on the Navajo Nation, the belief remains strong, a serious part of the cultural and spiritual reality. People still take precautions. They are wary of speaking of such things lightly. The fear is not of a story, but of a potential. The Skinwalker legend is a living entity, adapting but retaining its core warning, that there are lines which, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed, that some knowledge, when used without wisdom and heart, can transform the knower into something irrevocably lost. It reminds us that monsters are not always born. They are often made, through a series of choices that twist the soul into something unrecognizable. As the fire of our narrative burns down to embers, we are left with the echo of a whisper on the wind, the memory of a shape seen from the corner of the eye. The Skinwalker endures because it speaks to a primal anxiety, the fear of the other who is also the self, the horror of the sacred profaned. It is a creature of boundaries, between human and animal, between community and outcast, between healing and harming. Its power is a cautionary testament to the potency of belief, tradition, and the dark allure of forbidden power. So, the next time you find yourself in a vast, silent landscape under a blanket of stars, and you hear the cry of a coyote that sounds just a little too articulate, or you see a shape moving with an unnatural gait along the ridge line, remember the old stories. Remember that some legends are born from a deep understanding of the human heart's capacity for both great harmony and profound darkness. The night holds many secrets, and some of them are learning to wear our skin. The wind rises, the story is told, but the watching somewhere out there in the velvet dark never truly ends. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.